All right. So, um, I got pulled into your live. Really interesting stuff. Former Christian, now a faithist.
Right.
Um, so you have a little like summary of what faithists believe in, but I kind of want to hear like your own personal philosophy of like what you think it's really about, not just like the definition, you know?
Sure. So let me contrast it with Christianity. So,
Okay.
and just gonna go to like the functionality of it. So when I was a Christian, the point is to become a better person, right? Whether you're a Christian or a faithist or Buddhist, whatever, right? Better person. But when I was a Christian, I was kind of consumed with a lot of guilt and fear and shame
Hmm.
because I was told I was born, uh, what's the right word, degenerate or whatever, by the nature of sin, whatever. And then every time I sinned, it became a huge focal point. I had to remember to repent and confess, and the whole thing. And so what I have found is I was actually focusing on all of my negative traits, sins, or whatever you want to call them, instead of really focusing on, let's just say, sin is darkness, and all of the character traits of the Creator or God is light. So instead of
Yeah.
focusing on the light, I was focusing on darkness, trying to get to the light. And I didn't understand that dynamic until I really understood the principles found in Owaspy and Faithism, and also other places like Buddhism, and even the words of Jesus I didn't really understand until I left Christianity. Being content and looking within and not judging others, and just a lot of stuff. So from a practical standpoint, now when I sin, make a mistake, focus on the darkness, I don't have any guilt or shame or fear, but I recognize that there's a pattern of darkness. And so I just simply make a conscious effort to turn my back to the darkness and keep focusing on the light. And I got to tell you, it is so much easier to do that when you're not weighed down with guilt and fear. So
Yeah.
much easier.
Like it's the anxiety. It's I experienced this too because I was also formerly a Christian. And right now I'm a college student. I live with my parents. They're white, conservative, Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very religious. And I was raised as a Christian, as a Methodist actually.
Okay.
Um, and Methodist, despite the name, it's one of those branches of Christianity. It's like the less strict in the rules. It's a lot more free flowing in the way that the services work and the practices work.
Okay.
But kind of, maybe around my early teenage years, like 13, 14, I never really liked church anyway, just because, it's like the kid thing, you don't really like going to church. You don't like sitting still for an hour. But yeah, the anxiety of it all got to me. It's just, why do we have to be afraid?
Yeah.
It's why do they make you be afraid? It doesn't it That's not how it should be. I think if the creator was truly omnibenevolent, then there would be no need to have any fear.
Mm-hmm.
There would no need to have a hell. The hell portion of Christianity, that's I feel like that portion is more tied to the ancient philosophy of you need to look like the philosophy of Christianity is you need to look at the higher good, and if you don't look at the higher good, then you will go down to the lower bad, stuff like that. Oh, hey, my dog came
Well, that's
sorry.
actually kind of like
Uh,
faithism, actually, in a way. Um, Sorry, go finish your thought, then I'll sort of tell you a little bit about the faithist perspective of that.
okay, so here, let me go get my dog out of the room. Sorry. All
Oh,
right,
it's okay.
come on, buddy.
So if anyone's joining on TikTok, I'm actually talking to somebody from TikTok who jumped on a Zoom, and so that's who you hear talking in the background. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this whole philosophy with Christianity, you look at the higher good, right? That's kind of like, you know, that whole dichotomy when you look at all the religions in the world. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's either you look up at the highest good and you try to be like it, or you kind of connect with yourself and things around it and become more self-aware, you know? But it's all sort of pointing towards there is something better,
Mm-hmm.
right? You, no matter who you are, no matter what you are, there is something better, right? And you align yourself with that better, you know, whether it's achieving nirvana, whether it's going to heaven, you know, whether it's, you know, connecting with nature, all this stuff. There is something better. There is something more powerful than you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that part, you know, even as younger, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I like the idea of religion. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea of religion, but there's just parts of these ancient religions that are now modernized that, you know, it really does feel like it's about controlling the thoughts of
Mm-hmm.
people. You know, don't think about this thing, because if you think about that thing, then you're not aligning yourself with good, obviously. You know, so there's some parts like how modern Christianity sees hell and looks at hell, and especially like fundamentalist Christians, where you know you if you what was I trying to say? Fundamentalist Christians, where you know hell is a real place and
Mm-hmm.
you will literally be tortured and suffer for all of eternity. I think that's a terrible philosophy to have, and I think if there is a creator, which by the way I would consider myself an atheist, if
That's
there is a
cool.
creator, then why would they? There, that can't be something that they would be worried about. You know.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that perspective. It makes no sense to me. Um, I I didn't realize until after I left Christianity, really, or in the process of leaving, I didn't realize I was homophobic. I didn't realize I was a racist. I didn't realize I objectified. Well, actually, I did realize that, but I didn't realize that the reason for all of that was because of the religion. You know, when you're told to focus, when you're told that, when you're told not to, like a little kid with cake or whatever, don't eat the cake, and you walk out of the room. The only thing they're going to think about is not eating the cake, whether or not they eat the cake or not. That's all they're thinking about. And um, yeah, all of the rules, all of the mind games, all of the controlling your thoughts actually is a setup for failure. And it's really, and then of course they have the solution for your guilt. So it's like this giant con game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you about. So I really respect atheists. I have learned so much on appreciating life from an atheist perspective. I really have. I've talked about it a lot here. Um, so first off, it's important to know, or at least be aware of, the difference from a faithist perspective. There is a difference between God or the gods and the Creator,
Okay.
and this makes so much sense. It won't make any sense if you're still clinging on to what you've been taught about this. Why do you think there are so many gods, pantheons of gods, in independent, isolated, areas of the world? Um, I truly believe this, that those gods, probably some of them are just imaginary for sure, but there's something, whether they're aliens, whatever the catalyst was back in the day, there is a higher presence on this world that has interacted with humanity at some point, to some extent, or something or another. That's not the creator. Now, in the Book of Oahspe, and I'm not trying to make a case for the Book of Oahspe, I'm just sharing you from that perspective.
Okay.
God is more of an administrative position, and every world has, one chief god with sort of sub gods and lords, like a organization, government, business, whatever. That none of those are the creator. Those are just mortals who have died, and their spirits have learned whatever lessons they needed to learn and grown closer to the creator. and now they are working on behalf of the Creator to help raise us up. The whole process is, if you're at a certain level and there are spirits or souls or mortals below you, your job is to inspire them to raise themselves up. It's a process of developing humanity, individuals, yes, but mostly just the humanity of the planet through the course of thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Developing our spirit, it's like a guided evolution, right?
Yeah.
So you can see morals in animals. You can see in social animals, they know right from wrong. It's obvious, and it's been
Or
studied.
have some vague sense of it, you know.
Yeah, it's called proto-ethics or proto-morality, but it's there. But with humans, we're the only ones that have a sentient sense that we are ourselves. Like, we are self-aware, whether you're an atheist or someone who believes in a deity. There's some sense that we're special. Like,
Yeah.
we're unique.
Yeah, it's like something I heard that really encapsulates like the difference between animals and humans, because it's like obviously humans are biologically animals. We are animals, but
Yeah.
humans, it's like no other animal can really think about the future, can be self-aware about the future,
Mm-hmm.
specifically the word the future, right? Like there's obviously conditioning, right? Oh, I do this thing, I bury a nut in the ground, and then next winter I'll be able to eat while I hibernate,
Right.
it's like stuff like that. That's more conditioning, but thinking about the causes and effects and being aware of just the future in general. That's something that no one else, no other animal really has to the extent that humans have. And it's this whole question in biology. I'm really interested in biology and evolutionary biology. I try and learn about that stuff as much as I can. But that's really one of the big questions: is how similar are humans and animals? And you look at it and it's like, oh, we are just animals, right? Then you look at it a little bit closer and it's like, well, no, not really. It's like we have the same biological mechanisms
Mm-hmm.
as animals, right? But we use them in extremely interesting ways.
Yeah.
Extremely interesting, and it's kind of like, and what you bring it back to what you said about the Book of Waspy, how the gods, the creator is different from the gods, right? The
Mm-hmm.
gods are, and this is kind of a way that I've thought about religion is gods. The evolution of religion is kind of it's kind of the next part of the evolution of social hierarchies. Humans and a lot of animals, most animals, since most animals are social in some sense,
Mm-hmm.
there's an evolution of social hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
and gods. The whole point of God is that He is the top, right? He is the very top of the social hierarchy. Nothing can get past Him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of how I think it. All these different cultures, all these different societies, they have their own gods because they have their own social hierarchies. There's like the macro social hierarchies, there's the micro social hierarchies, and then the societal, the entire picture of society. The point of religion is this is the top of the social hierarchy. And you could think of it as a way like, oh, social hierarchies are obviously bad, that kind of like Marxist influence on it. Social hierarchies, they're bad, and we want to get rid of them because the people at the bottom versus the people at the top,
Right.
it's growing too big, blah blah blah, right? That's a different topic. But
Yeah.
that's kind of that it has to play with Marxist with Marx's um, criticism of religion, where it's all about social hierarchy, and then obviously he thinks social hierarchy is bad. But that's kind of how I thought of it. And that the book of what you said about the book of philosophy, like I feel like that aligns with my philosophy of it is, if there is a creator of the universe, obviously not measurable by science, probably, the creator of the universe, and then it talks about just gods in general, which are the pinnacles of the social hierarchies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually really interesting. And if you care to talk more about the philosophies in the Book of Wall Street, I would like to hear that because I found that really interesting.
Yeah. So the next thing to talk about after sort of dissecting the difference between God and the Creator is our part in this whole thing. And so what the reason, okay, so if you think of the world as a garden and it starts out as barren ground, like in evolution, the ball of molten and then it cooled down and the processes sort of built on itself, right? So OWASP verifies, it doesn't have any contradiction with that. So at a certain point in time, the animals develop their self-awareness. We develop our self-awareness enough so that when we die, our spirit has the capability of still existing. Because there's a point in time where that was not true, and as humanity grows, like a garden, every season, if you're caretaking it, the soil gets better, the crops get better, everything gets more vibrant. So that's what the picture is here on Earth. So at the point when our spirit is able to survive the physical death, then where does the spirit go? That's the point in time when the hierarchy of the gods and stuff is created. So there's a place created for the spirits to go, and then there is the management, sort of the teachers and sort of the guides to try to keep the growth going. So that's the process. Now, free will looks so much different this way than with Christianity, because Christianity, as you know, love me or go to hell. That's not really free will. That's manipulation. That's like narcissism and all of that stuff. This, if you can imagine a piano keyboard, and we're all born on middle C, right in the middle. And through the course of our life, we have the capacity for darkness, we have the capacity for light, and we go to whichever keys we choose to go, either up the scale, higher in frequency, or lower in frequency.
Yeah, either a major scale or a minor scale,
Right.
Only two options.
So when our body's dying, that position of where we're at on the keyboard doesn't get reset. We're still on the same journey, going in the same direction as we were in life. So if we were a bad guy, we're still going to be a bad guy. If we're a good guy, basically. But our perspective changes because our density changes. So this is a very physical world, and our bodies are reflections of that dense physical world. When we shed this body, we are on a different plane of existence, and our body reflects that plane of existence. So it's less dense, more refined, but it's still attached to this world. It still has, I guess you could say, the physical elements, just more refined, less dense kind of thing, higher vibration. But we still have the choice of which direction to go in. So it's not a final destination of you die, you're either going to heaven or hell, and that's the end of the story. You can go to what we would call heaven and, have a great time and sort of get kind of take it for granted. I'm like, oh, this is great. I've learned the lessons. I've obviously arrived. I'm in heaven. So now I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to go my own way. And instead of serving others, you're basically serving yourself. And so now, slowly but surely, you're going down the keyboard. And before you realize it, you've surrounded yourself with self-centeredness, darkness, and chaos. And that would be sort of hell, because now you're surrounded by other people that are exactly the same way. This is where the free will goes through the roof, as far as I'm concerned. So people go to this darkness, and it comes a point in time where they cannot make the decision to exit. They're just like, it's so dark that you lose sort of your coherence of thought, right? It's chaotic. Well, like I said, anybody who is up here is always reaching down to try and raise up anybody who's lower than them as far as on the journey goes. So these people who are in hell get rescued by the ones who are above them. And, they get sort of rehabilitated. And then they get to make the decision all over again. Do you really want to go back to hell? Do you want to be selfish, or do you want to start learning the process of being selfless and having peace and joy and like a purpose? And so that's always the case. I mean, there are stories in Owaspy where there's like a God who's been appointed by the Creator, and that God actually made the decision to sort of start their own kingdom, do their own thing. And their whole kingdom fell into darkness. And they were rescued and, rehabilitated, the whole thing. So free will never goes away. And the question from a Christian point of view was, how is it that God is going to ensure that sin never rears its face again? The only possible solution is that our free will is taken away. That's the only possible solution to make sure. And so without free will, then is it paradise? I would say no. Anyway, so that's that part. There's so much more. There's the science of Owaspy, which you find very, very interesting. I'm just now delving into. I've only been reading Owaspy for a year, so I'm not one to be like an expert, teaching it, but totally it gives a whole new perspective on what we can observe, and to me makes it more coherent than our theories. But like, the information's out there. I read a book by David Icke, and he goes into sort of like the scalar field and the how the universe is more like a waveform and more like information than anything physical. And it's all about motion and frequency and how we are decoding it to feel physical. It's exactly like that in Owaspy. It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective that you just talked about, it all kind of seems just as metaphysical, as any other religious book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a super important part about religion, is that it is metaphysical, and metaphysical can be just as real as real.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole part. I think that's why I hate when it's so annoying when I see atheists try and debunk religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not doing anything. You're not debunking anything.
Yeah.
In reality, there's a good chance that there is no God, but that's not the point. That's just not the point.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's really, and I hate it. It's so annoying.
I think we've gone away from this. We've gotten so analytical, we've stopped appreciating the mystery. Like, okay, here's the book. And I really enjoy this book. It's a big book. It's only really big because of the way it was published. But am I okay with this book being a total fabrication? I am 100% okay with it because of the concepts in the book, how they have improved my life, how they have improved my worldview, my appreciation of humanity. And if it's all fabricated, I'm okay with it because it has allowed me to connect with humanity in a way that I never could reading the Bible, never could in any other way. And so I personally sort of indulge in the idea that it's real because I like to think it's real. But I'm okay. I like the mystery. I'm okay with it not being real.
No, I mean, what more real can you get than improving yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no more real you can get. And a book that I really like, it's gathered dust a little bit in my room, but I read it my senior year of high school. It's by Mircea Eliade. I don't know if it's all
Myth of Reality.
It's called Myth and Reality.
Oh, and Reality.
And it kind of takes it's similar to the philosophy of the book is similar to what I've been talking about,
Hmm.
about really why is religion? What exactly is religion? Like from an objective point of view, what are the myths of religion? And it's kind of given me another appreciation for all religions and truly understanding what the point of them are. And now I'd like to take a second to turn back a little bit
Hmm.
and talk about something that I think you'd find really interesting. Probably would disagree with a lot. Not many people agree with me on this. It's my view on free will.
Oh, cool.
Now, nobody no, I haven't heard anyone that fully agrees with me on this. I think my personal philosophy for free will is that we humans, animals, we don't have a shred of free will, not a single little ounce of it. Free will is an archaic concept. It's not a real thing. And even like maybe not the majority, but even neuroscience, a lot of neuroscientists believe that there's somehow free will in there, even
Uh-huh.
after they kind of accept that we are biological creatures. And that's really kind of the main focal point of this idea that we don't have free will is that we are biological creatures. We are robots, kind of. We are extremely, extremely, extremely complex robots,
Yeah.
but we are still robots, and um, that's kind of it's like everything, every single human behavior, every single human behavior that can happen, that has happened, that will happen in the future, is explained by your biology and your environment. Not just one or the other. It's always both. You cannot explain biology without understanding the environment. You cannot understand how we react to the environment without understanding our biology.
So you're saying it's conditioned responses based upon basically the program that we have been submitted to.
Conditioned responses, yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. It's it's more similar to just kind of like take an example that I like to talk about is when we think we make decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we think we have a choice, when we think we have free will, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it feels just as real as anything.
Right.
I'm a hypocrite. I don't act like we don't have free will. I obviously act like I have free will, because who doesn't,
Right.
right? Everyone does. We're kind of supposed to act like we have free will in the way our society is constructed.
Mm-hmm.
But an example I like to point out is this is a really interesting fact, and it might have gotten lost in translation over the time I've used it, but it's something like the highest correlation of um, when a judge lets out someone on parole
Yeah.
and rejects parole, the highest correlation, almost 100%. This is really weird, is their blood sugar level.
The
That's the
judge's
highest
blood sugar
correlation.
level.
Their blood sugar level, the judge's blood sugar level.
Oh
That's the
man.
highest correlation.
What?
Whether they have had lunch or not, what all the hormones in our body, all the hormones in our blood,
Yeah.
they plus a million other things. Plus, if you've had a stressful morning, if you've had a stressful last 2 weeks, how much protein you had as an infant, if your mother smoked or not,
Mm-hmm.
that one thing that your dad said to you when you were 12 years old on December 8th, it's like all of this stuff, there's no room for free will. And this guy in the chat, I'm reading this here, he said, of course we have free will. If you choose to agree with Skinnerians, that's your will. You're talking about B.F. Skinner. I know what you're talking about. And this is not Skinnerian, if that's what you'd like to call it. It's not Skinnerian. Skinnerian, it's that's like kind of one part of it. Skinner was all about the stimulus. You
Oh yeah.
know, I'm talking to Johnny Tocino 7 if you're still in the chat. Um, Skinner was about the environment. Skinner was about he had this quote, something like, give me give me anyone and let me control everything about their environment. You
Mm-hmm.
know, let me control what they're fed, when they're fed, what exactly they see, what exactly they feel, what exactly they hear, and you can make that person into anything, right? And we know that's not true. That is a perspective that it's really just a really simple perspective on it. And it's missing a whole other half. You know, that's kind of Skinnerism. He had this famous experiment where he had pigeons. He is popular for the pigeon experiment where he had pigeons and he pretty much made himself into their god by, the pigeons would ended up like doing rituals to get food from him and pretty much create his own religion inside a pigeon colony.
Oh wow.
That's what Skinner is. I mean, exactly. That is someone who was the advocate against the idea of free will. Okay, that doesn't just
Well,
because he was an advocate against the idea of free will doesn't mean that believing in free will is a Skinnerism.
let me ask you
Um,
this: have you heard? So there was a study, an experiment where they hooked people's brains up to the monitors, whatever they do, and they detected that. So they gave people a choice between whatever two A and B, whatever it is, and like a split second, whatever the measurement was, they were able to figure out that the decision to pick A or B was actually done sort of before they were actually consciously making this decision. It was a decision that was measurable before they actually had made their mind up. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
yeah, it's well, obviously there are things that are really obviously measured to be like, oh, this thing happened in your brain and now that makes you do this,
Uh-huh.
right? Kind of goes back to what you said about like where it's like the conditioning inside the programming,
Yeah.
right? It's like your whatever this stimulus is, then what your program is. If this happens, then A. If this happens, then B, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are things that are super obvious, right? But there are things that really aren't obvious. You know, which tooth you decide to floss, which early in the morning, that's not obvious, and that's one of those things where it's almost so hard to understand why we will do that thing. Just spontaneously. I usually do the top one. Now I'm gonna do the bottom one. It's
Mm-hmm.
like that's so hard to explain that you might as well just say, okay, fine, you have free will in those small things, right? But
So let me ask you this, and there may not be an answer. It may not even matter. But so, does it change our perspective, understanding everything that you said? I'm not going to try and summarize it because it was a lot about not having free will. Does it change how you walk through this life, appreciate life, or having free will is something that is sort of a beneficial delusion? Like
mm,
what is the actual functional result of one belief or the other belief?
I like talking about this. I like talking about this. But before that, I want to get more interaction in the comments. I want this live to go. I want this live to hit the For You page. So, Johnny Tocino, did you have a choice whether to react to my simplistic statement or not? See, that's one that they always think, you had a choice whether to say that,
Right.
and you chose to say that,
Not re-
but that's not really what it's about. It's about the environment and where it's like a million. It's so many things. It's first of all, I read my visual stimulus, saw the question, and in the social situation I'm in, I'm kind of implored to answer these questions. I also am defensive of my beliefs because that also goes into social hierarchies and identity politics that we've evolved with. So there's a million ways to answer that question. Johnny Tochi. No, I'm asking, did you not my it is one of the most defining characters. No, I'm asking, did you not my answer? Can you rephrase that, please? Anyway, the thing you said, how does it kind of change your worldview?
Yeah. Like,
That's a big one. Because I feel like you kind of let it. That it's kind of just one of those truths that you accept. You accept, but it's really hard in how our society works to implement it.
mm-hmm.
You can think about it and it can be fun thoughts,
Yeah.
but to really implement that, oh, we are just robots. And, you know, it can get really fatalistic too. It's like, oh, we have no free will. So that means that we can't change as people. We can't look inside ourselves and change. Well, that's obviously not true because we can do that.
Is it a
But
combination of all that collective programming, kind of this momentum in our life, you know? Is it so that would be like not having free will, all that programming, all the stimulus, all the environment, all that stuff is so that's the part that's not free will. Is there a combination of the not free will part and then our ability to to rise above it if we if we choose?
so
Is there
it's like,
some kind of combination?
is there a situation where I kind of understand. It's like, is there a situation where knowing about it would give you free will?
Yeah, self-awareness of your situation. Very interesting thought puzzle. It's a thought puzzle. Trying.
I'm really asking, did you have a choice to react or able to pause? Understand what I'm saying. I believe we have free will, but it's very rare.
What?
We have free will, but it's very rare. Why, why would it be rare? I feel like free will is one of those things where if it exists, then it's active all the time, and if it
Yeah.
doesn't exist, then it's never active. I don't see how it'd be rare. It's difficult. Okay. I'm asking, did you have a choice to see? It's the thing. It's not about choices. You know, people think they make choices. Oh, I gotta plug in my laptop. People think they make choices, and in reality, what influenced you to and what influenced you to make that choice also has to deal with your hormone level in your bloodstream that morning. You know, it's like you can't really answer, did you actually make that choice? Hold on. Answer that because there's a million ways to answer that.
I think at this point, this guy's been observing this conversation since before you joined the Zoom. At this point, if he's asking this question, I don't think he actually understood, and I don't think that explaining it is going to help because you already said it very clearly. I mean, I can follow the train of thought. I don't know. He's not getting it. Maybe
Well,
because
it's
it's I don't know.
I mean, it's people. It's. I feel. I don't want to discredit him. I don't. I don't.
Well,
I
he says
don't
he
know what
gets
he.
it.
In reality, the medium that we're talking through, him chatting in on the TikTok comments, it's a really hard way to explain your viewpoint. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
that's
why I
why
like.
that's why I'm doing it. That's why I asked to come on Zoom with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he is trying to. He's trying to challenge. I mean, what he's doing, he's trying to challenge me, and I implore that. I love when people challenge my beliefs. That's one of the best things you could do for someone who wants to have strong beliefs is challenge it, and that's what I try. That's what I try and do when I come in these lives. I want people to disagree with me, throw everything they have at me, and challenge me. So I hope this guy does understand because I want him to ask better questions. We can, but it's difficult. Most of the time, we are automatons. I don't think I I am led it to truth. Okay, wait. Most of the time, we are automatons. I don't think most of the time we are automatons. I think all the time
So there is
because
no combination.
it does and it's so hard. It's not. It's because how complex we are that it doesn't feel like we are sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's because we when you really look into the neurobiology of everything, we use the exact same biology that every other animal does. There's no different like new neurons that humans have. There's no different thing that humans have that we use to think about philosophy.
Well,
You know,
let me ask you this. Okay, here's an example I just thought of. Okay, being fat is a combination of pretty much everything we've talked about. Your family life, your personal, habits, and your personal decisions or lack of decisions or whatever. But some people at some point sort of like reject the program and they become skinny. They go to the gym, stop eating junk food. And was that inevitable, or was that an exception? It was that a rare case of operating like with free will because you're bucking your program, or is that inevitable that eventually you would be tired of being fat?
well, that's kind of it. You know, something that gets tied into free will a lot is kind of this Newtonian determinism, and that's kind of what you're getting into a little bit. Is everything determined? You know, is the change from someone being fat to someone making the active choices to be healthy? You know,
Mm-hmm.
is that all a part of this plan that people associate with free will? Obviously, we don't make choices, so someone else has already decided the choices, or something else, or the laws of motion, which is what Einstein believed in. Einstein believed in Newtonian determinism. He
Mm.
thought that the universe runs from it's on a clock. You know, it's on a timer. It started at the beginning of time, and the universe has run from whatever started the vast expansion of the universe, which is the very quick and vast expansion, which is what our best hypothesis is right now, the Big Bang hypothesis. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the Big Bang hypothesis, but everything is acting according to Newton's laws of motions.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma, life-threatening moments, crises can lead to free will. Well, are those not a part of your environment, Johnny Tocino? Those are a part of your environment,
Could be
and
all just
how you deal with those is based on your biology. Whether you were if your mom while your mom was pregnant was had a lot of stress hormones in her body, was very stressed all the time, then that means that you're going to be more likely to be succumb to stress more often as you grow up. You know, it's all biology. How you deal with those things is all biology. And where you're saying like, is the change to become healthy a part of free will? Well, you see how your body acts in your environment, right? And you see that I can't do this thing that would, as the animal perspective, would lead me to be in a higher place in the social hierarchy,
mm,
right? And animals, humans, they want to be in the highest place of social hierarchy.
mm-hmm.
That's why people want to be rich. That's why people want to be liked by everyone. That's why people want to have smart ideas. That's why people want to put their ideas out there. That's why people want to be strong. You know, it's they want to have higher places in the social hierarchy. Well, I'm fat. I'm low in the social hierarchy, so that's kind of like the reptilian part of our brain saying we need to do something so that we can get to a higher place in the
Yeah.
social hierarchy.
So
You
it's
know?
a natural progression of chain reactions.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to think about. It's hard to distinguish. Honestly, it's really hard to distinguish in my mind. I understand what you're saying, and I don't have any issue with it. But when I really think about it, it still feels like free will.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time. Like, I really try to sort of empty my cup and fill it with whoever I'm talking with, so I can just immerse myself in that. I'm having a hard. It feels like the free will still exists. But I really appreciate this perspective.
I mean, of course it does. Of course you feel like free will exists. In our society, that's the best way to go about things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I don't like talking about these things with like people that I don't trust to be intellectually minded. because I feel like if they do believe what I'm saying, it actually might affect them in a bad way. You know, they might get that sensory information and then it might hit their neuron, and then their neuron realize, oh shit, we have a lot of stress hormones in our body. Time to kick on the amygdala and think about anxiety, you know,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety about this, anxiety about our future and our and really what's going to happen. But yeah, it's really, I'd say don't get, if anything, just don't get too fatalistic about it. If people are to like really take it to heart, you know, the best way to go about life is that you do have free will. As of right now in our
Yeah.
society, that is the best way to go about life.
So,
Um,
yeah, if there is no free will, I'm going to pretend there is.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's kind of the way that I try and look at it, because there's this great professor. Really, kind of what kicked off my idea and my philosophy about free will is I share a lot of my philosophy with him. His name is Robert Sapolsky. He's one of the best teachers, one of the best professors of our generation. He's at Stanford. He's the professor of neurobiology
Hmm.
and neuroscience and evolutionary biology. Um, great professor. He has many lectures on YouTube, and this is kind of his outlook. And watching his 30 plus hours of lectures, I've kind of adopted little
Mm-hmm.
bit of it. It's and he says it's like, well, there's two ways. You know, it's he believes his belief is that the next, kind of the way he puts it, is like the next step in advancement of our society, you know, is to believe that there is no free will. That is the next step. You know, it's like right now in our evolution and the way our society works, maybe not, maybe it's not so much of a good idea, but kind of thinking about it like this. So, in the absence of free will,
Mm-hmm.
there is no blame, right? That person who who you know, the Uvalde shooting that killed all those children, that person, he is not to blame. And that's a terrible thing to think about, right? You don't want to think that man is evil. He committed an atrocity. He is evil. He killed children. He is an evil man,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then and then the other side of it is there's no praise as well. And that's the hardest thing for people to let go of, you know?
Hmm.
When it's like, oh, you did so great on this project.
Right.
You had such a great idea. You did so good on this. Well, actually, no, I didn't. It's just because of my biology and my environment. You know, it's really hard to let go of that. But when you actually do start thinking about it, when you do start thinking about it, you can imagine all the changes that would happen in our society. You know, this um, uh, anecdotal example: this schizophrenic man who maybe had a seizure and killed three people on the street with a knife. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that man is evil. That man should be arrested. He should be put in prison for life. He is to blame for the deaths of these people, an atrocity, evil atrocity. Well, how about he has schizophrenia, right? Which we do know is genetic. And maybe put him on the right medication, which it can be treated with medication. Put him on the medication, and if he doesn't have a seizure for 6 months, then you know, maybe it's okay to let him free. You know, but a lot of people are grossed out by that.
So there's an example, I believe, was what you're talking about in real life. There's a tribe, and I don't know where they're located. But so let's say somebody does something violent, murders somebody of the tribe. What they do is they put that person in the center of the circle, and they do not break the circle until that person feels a part of the tribe again. They shower them with, whatever their process is, love and acceptance, and they will not end that circle until that person feels like they're part of the tribe again, because their theory is similar to what you're saying, but there is a disconnect. And so instead of punishment, it's immediate reassimilation and acceptance, because I guess the theory is that the reason why they did that was because the system was broken, like the communal system was broken, so they're not going to leave that circle until it's fixed, and everybody's responsible and everybody is in it. I mean, I really wish I knew what tribe that was because it's really fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating. That's it's similar. I mean, it's similar to it's kind of just a more humane way of our prison system. Really, it's like it's exactly what our prison system should be. You know, but in reality, it's probably not perfect, just like our prison system. Which
Yeah.
that's one of Sapolsky's view is abolition of the prison of our modern prison system. You know, and going back to what I said earlier about no blame and no
Mm-hmm.
praise. That's one of the hardest things that people have to grasp about this. It's like, well, if that man wasn't to blame for the death of your family, then we should just let him go. And that's yeah, and in that situation, you have to really think about what the idea of no free will is. It's we are biological computers, essentially. So think of it like this. If you're driving a car and then all of a sudden the brakes stop working and you get in an accident, you get in a fender bender. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do with that car? Do you blame the car? Are you blaming the car for the brakes not working? No, you're not blaming the car for the brakes not working. You put it in a repair shop and you wait for it to get repaired.
Right.
You don't blame the car. Oh, look what this car did. Oh my God, this car hurt my neck. Oh my gosh, I hate this car. This car is evil.
Right.
No, obviously you don't believe that. It's this car had a malfunction and you put it and obviously you don't drive it again. We don't let these murderers out on the street again, even if there is no blame. We don't let these murderers out on the street again. We put it in the repair shop.
So is being a sentient being, is that an illusion?
Being a sentient being, is that an illusion? Being a sentient being, is that an illusion? No, because I don't think sentience I don't well, first of all, sentience, there's a million ways to define it. And even if it
True.
doesn't feel like it, there's a million ways to define it. Um, I mean, sentience
Well, just self-aware, I guess. We're self-actualized. Let's just keep it like that.
is being self-actualized an illusion? No, because we just said it.
But what if?
We were talking about it.
But
So
what
we are
if?
self-actualized.
Yeah, but we think that we're unique. But there are scientific endeavors, and slowly, research has been demonstrating that even plants can have sympathy, and that their sentience, however you define it, is is sort of being revealed in ways that are very surprising. Like they can have compassion and communicate and protect and have a sense of community and recognize good and bad in their environment and in themselves. So if plants, let's say everything is sentient, but we only recognize it in ourselves, and plants only recognize it in themselves, and dogs only recognize it in themselves, and so we're a bunch of islands that think that we're unique, but we're really not unique. We're just expressing it in different ways.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's hard to think about.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't really thought about it like that. Um, well, I think if you define sentience as self-awareness, um, there's a lot of animals that have measurable self-awareness. It's we can put the most common self-awareness test in animals and animal testing is the mirror test.
Mm-hmm.
Is and for a monkey, you put lipstick on the monkey's lips, And then if they wipe it off when they see it in a mirror, then they're self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
They know that mirror. They know what's in that mirror is them. And there's a lot of animals that will see a mirror and be like, "Oh my God, who is that?"
Yeah.
It's kind of like a fun, like you see like those funny dog videos, and eventually, they'll understand that it is them. And I guess it's not fair for dogs. For dogs, it would need to be some kind of olfactory mirror because they're not visual animals. They're more smell.
Mm-hmm.
They're more predicated around smell. But yeah, is self awareness an illusion?
I have no idea.
Oh, that's like the man.
Doesn't
That's like going into like simulation theory type shit. It's like it's almost which simulation theory it does have some relevance to the topic we're talking about. um, but man, that's a hard question.
I mean,
um,
I've heard people discuss that we're all one consciousness and our individuality is an illusion, and we think that
no, I don't believe that.
I don't know if I believe it or not, but I don't know. I I I don't think I believe that, but
I think
that
the
would.
only way for me to answer that question is the most real thing the most real thing that we can measure is our evolution. That's how I think of it. That's the most real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what goes into that is the environment, how our environment affects our evolution. And but yeah, that's the most real thing.
Hmm.
The history of sentience and when we gained certain amounts of self awareness in our evolution. Well, I'm not qualified to answer that because I
Yeah.
have no fucking idea in reality. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. Our evolution is once we understand. It's like this. So another type of thing I like to think about, or I like to talk about and put in perspective when I talk about free will is in a summary is if there is a supercomputer in a million years,
Mm-hmm.
a hyper ultra supercomputer that is a trillion times faster and smarter than any computer we have right now.
Yeah.
If it could lay out our entire genome, if it could see every single cell in our body, every single cell in our body,
Mm-hmm.
and it could perfectly understand every single environment, every single stimulus that every single cell is going through.
It has
And if
gone
it
through.
and if it can also understand our stimulus within inside a society and our environment outside of our bodies. And if it could perfectly describe all of those, then it can and it would predict every single human behavior.
Oh
And
man.
that's kind of what biology supports.
Yeah.
That's kind of what modern biology supports. And where's the room for free will?
Yeah.
Where
No.
there's no room for free will,
That's
in
interesting.
there. There's no room. There's nothing in our brain that's not of our brain.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? There's no ghost inside the machine. I don't think, that's a lot of people like talking about, a lot of people like thinking that there's more to consciousness. They'll take shrooms once and be like, oh, I swear I'm connected with the universe. I swear my consciousness lifted up, right? It's like, yeah, that's cool. Our brain is amazing. But I don't think there is anything more to consciousness. I think consciousness
Is
is
limited to the physical brain?
well, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't. My personal belief is I don't think spiritual energy exists. I
Hmm.
don't think spirituality obviously exists because it's a trait of human. It's a characteristic of human philosophy.
So what do
But
you? How do you? Okay, so the shrooms, yeah, I understand that's like unverifiable, but there are like remote viewing and like astral travel where people have been able to retrieve information, details of information way beyond their physical perception, like around the world or whatever. How do you answer that?
I would from the information that you just gave me, I wouldn't be able to answer that
Well, I
because I
mean,
mean, I would have to, I would have to understand, and it would obviously have to be in a very controlled and regulated environment, you know, for that kind of thing to be unfalsifiable by science.
yeah,
But in reality, our brains are really fucking crazy. Our brains are really
agreed.
amazing. Um, so it's, you know, in one thing I like talking about is hypnosis. You know, a lot of people, because there is clinical hypnosis. It's a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not magic. Hypnosis is not magic. There's a difference. There's clinical hypnosis and there's stage
Yeah.
hypnosis. Stage hypnosis, it's super easy to explain. It's just suggestion. That's
Mm.
literally all it is. Is
Mm-hmm.
if you're on stage, you want to have an audience that is wowed. Once
Yeah.
you're on stage, you're in that point of the social hierarchy, in that micro social hierarchy that you're in at that moment. You want to be wowed. And if you want to be wowed, then you're going to be wowed,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's just kind of how it works. Clinical hypnosis is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it's a little bit like what you said about people going into the depths of their brains and reaching information, or I don't know about projecting onto halfway across the world and meeting a little boy named Amud and hearing
Mm-hmm.
about his life. I don't know about that. But clinical hypnosis, that's a real thing. And a lot of people say, oh, there has to be something more to consciousness because that one time I heard God speak to me, you know, or I saw the machine elves, you know, I'm talking about like
Yeah.
DMT, the psychedelics. I saw the machine elves and it told me how the pyramids were built, right? Well, yeah, your brain really likes doing that kind of stuff because, well, we don't know why, but we know that it likes doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's just kind of, you know, we haven't answered all the questions in our brain yet, even though that kind of goes, even though it sounds like it goes a little bit against my philosophy of we understand all the biomechanical functions of our brain and we understand all of them, so there's no room for free will. Well, we know that it's all the same neurons, right? No matter the crazy experience, you just witnessed a ghost walk into your room and tell you how your mother died, and no matter the crazy experience, there is all the same neurons are firing.
Right.
Whether and it's like something an anecdote I like to say is that Robert Sapolsky also likes to say is you know, humans use their brains in really unique ways, but it's all the same ways. You know, it's kind of it's like a little funny little ism type thing. But you know, when you could be sitting on a table, right, with one person on the other side of you, not moving a single inch, just
Mm-hmm.
looking, and then all of a sudden you raise your arm and you pick up a little piece of wood and you move it 1 inch. And at that moment, you can have the heart rate of an Olympic athlete. How fucking insane is that? Like no other any other animal would be appalled or like absolutely wild. How can your amygdala and hippocampus be firing and your prefrontal cortex thinking about the future all while you're just sitting there moving a piece of wood? Well, when there's two people in a grandmaster chess tournament, that's what happens. People have the heart rates, you know, up where Olympic athletes are, and they can sustain it for hours.
Yeah. Chess is
And
intense.
we use all the same functions of our brain, just in really unique ways, you know. And it's when you think about hypnosis, and when you think about, oh, I did a little seance circle and all the candles in my seance circle all went out one at a time, all from left to right. It's like, well, there's a million things that are going on in your brain, and your vision is not really that trustworthy. It's not as trustworthy as you think it is.
Yeah.
There's a million things that could be going on in there, And yeah, it's just there are so many different and unique ways to use our very normal biomechanics.
Yeah. Um, if you're curious, it would be interesting to get your perspective on remote viewing. Remote viewing has been utilized by the U.S. government and probably other governments too for intel gathering. And I forget the name of the project or whatever, but if you look up like CIA remote viewing or something like that, you should be able to figure it out pretty easily. I actually bought a disc set years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, from one of the guys that was leading an instructor for the U.S. Army or CIA or whoever he was working for. And I've heard him do interviews, and the intel that they were getting was not 100% accurate, but it was credible enough to, it was like, it was accurate enough for the people with the computers to pick up the breadcrumbs and like, oh, well, we never would have thought of that. Let's look in that dark corner of the world. And lo and behold, there was, it was worth it enough for them to keep the program going because it was gathering information. I don't know how any of that works. Like, is it our brain on overdrive and we're so perceptive physically that we can actually accomplish that if we train our brain, or is it spiritual? I don't know, but it's really fascinating.
Well, I mean, that's just one of those things where if that is true, and if the frame, if in the perspective that you said it in, if that is true, well, that would pretty much just shatter my whole belief system. You know,
I don't think it would, because like you said, our brains. Okay, here's an example. So I had a friend, I visited him, and we were tinkering around with different ideas like, meditation and remote viewing, all that stuff. And I never really ever cracked the code on that myself. But a few days after I left, I said, okay, look, hide something in your house. I'm familiar with it, so I know the layout. I'm not going to have to guess, the layout, but I don't know what you're hiding and I don't know where you're going to hide it. And he said, okay, great. And so he hit it, and I kind of forgot about it. And a couple days later, I did a meditation, and I saw what it was, and I saw exactly where it was, and I called him up, and he said, well, it was there exactly the way you described it, but I moved it because you never called me. But so in my head, was my head diagnosing like a chessboard all the possible moves, and I had to relax enough and I came up with a solution, or was I somehow tapping into that spot remotely? I don't know, but it's pretty interesting. It doesn't have to dismantle your worldview. It's just something to think about, because it doesn't have to be one thing or the other.
this guy in the chat said, "I just remote viewed the back of your sweater. It's mesh or woolly." That's funny. This man.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I mean, that was quick, man. That was no setup or anything.
Yeah.
Just saw it. All right. But yeah, I mean, if in reality, so my friend told me about this one thing one time, and I made an anecdote about it just a little bit ago. Of she is pagan,
Uh-huh.
right? She does rituals sometimes. She'll do like spells and shit. And I think that's cool, whatever. But she told me a story about when she did a seance and she had like a bunch of candles in a circle
Mm-hmm.
and she was casting a spell. And then all of a sudden, after she was finished the spell, all of the candles flickered out one by one by one by one from left to right.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "How can you explain that?" And I said, "Well, I can't explain it because I wasn't there. Only you can explain it." And that's
Mm-hmm.
the thing about the brain is that it works so in such crazy ways that your subconscious is more conscious than you're conscious sometimes. That's
Well,
a weird way to put it.
okay, so going back to David Icke, so he it's not his. He's just a collector of information. He had 100 pages worth of citations in the back of his book. So he just citation after citation. But the way he would describe it is we are all non-physical. Basically, our physical is an illusion, and the information we're getting from our world is non-physical, and we're just interpreting that information in a way that makes sense to us, which is physical, right? And so if we have tapped into an ability that are of our mind, we can either encode that with like a very supernatural perception because that's how we're going to perceive it, or we can come up with a more like analytical explanation. But it doesn't change the fact that there is some sort of result of remote viewing. So you can either think of that as some supernatural thing, or you can just figure out that the brain is really good at doing that if you can train it. It's a way of we are always decoding our environment in a way that makes sense to us.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so taking your example of remote viewing,
Uh-huh.
um, there are ways to analytically kind of decode it. You know, ways that our conscious awareness can't understand at the time of the experiment, but our subconscious can. And that's a real thing. Your
Mm-hmm.
subconscious. That's not a weird concept. That some people think of. Oh, our subconscious is so crazy. That must mean that there's something more to consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a reason that we have a subconscious. There is a reason, and it can be utilized in really really creepy ways. Um, and I think that might be an explanation for that. You know, times where maybe there were hints in the environment that you didn't see,
Mm-hmm.
that you obviously it has to go through your visual cortex, right, to get to any part of your brain, that you didn't pick up on, but um, your brain did. And there's crazy ways to think about our subconscious. You know what priming is?
I believe so, but you tell me. So, because
So priming, it's like how we view the world,
mm-hmm.
and can change a lot of things, can change a lot of perspectives, can change a lot of emotions and how we react. And you can change how you view the world through things that you're not aware of, right? So,
Right.
example of this that kind of it's a weak example, but it's the same principle of there was a study group at Yale in the 1990s. They did this example. They did a study where people, at some point in the experiment, they were asked to hold either a warm cup of coffee or an iced cup of coffee, right? And then about 30 minutes later, they were asked to evaluate a person's personality, the same exact personality. And people who held the warm cup of coffee were more likely to say that that person's personality is warm or comforting, and people who
Yeah.
held the ice cold cup of coffee were more likely to say that person's personality is cold or
Yeah.
uncomforting, unforgiving. It's like they weren't thinking about the cup of coffee, they weren't thinking about that when they analyzed the person's personality. I just That's just their brain, and it's
Yeah.
their brain being primed. You know,
Yeah.
another really interesting one that uh, I find it really funny is so something that we've proven is your some is about the social politics that you have.
Yeah.
way more easily influenced than anyone thinks,
Yeah.
right? So one thing is,
It's
if
really
you
sad.
are in a room that has a smell of dirty garbage, right? A terrible, awful smell. You are more likely to be socially conservative. It
Really?
doesn't change anything about your economics, doesn't change anything about your geopolitical views, but you are more likely to um, exaggerate the divide between us and them, which is what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by social politics. And us and them, that's a really interesting thing to talk about
Yeah.
because um, that's one thing. I'm in a sociology class right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one thing that makes me that it made me realize I don't like sociology is how they think about us and them and social politics and race relations, class relations, all these different relations. And the sociologist's point of view is, well, obviously, it's created by society, right? Obviously, because well, you look at a young 4 year old playing with a young white 4 year old playing with a young black 4 year old. Oh, look at that! Racism is a social construct, right? I mean, that's not good evidence, but they'll say that race is a social construct. Us versus them is a social construct, and man, how false that is crazy. It is so false. Well, first of all, there are literal parts in your brain that are meant to identify us versus them, right?
Hmm.
And we see it in monkeys. We see it in chimpanzees too.
Hmm.
Um, there are parts in their brain that are meant to identify between monkeys in their tribe and monkeys in another tribe. And this race violence and tribal violence. So it's all socially created. Obviously, animals could never do anything like that. It's all socially created. If you didn't know, baboons, primates, all primates, most like chimp, closer to chimp relatives, baboons, orangutans, chimps, even gorillas. They're not that closely related, but uh, what they'll do is they actually have gang violence. So their tribes, their troops,
Yeah.
um, they'll set up little groups of chimps to patrol around their borders. And if they see a lone monkey, or if they outnumber monkeys they see from another group, they will tear that group into
Oh
pieces.
my goodness.
They will literally like tear them apart, limb from limb, and they will be so happy about it. And if there's no danger involved, it's not about food. They don't eat anything. It's just they see them and they kill them.
So it's
And
preserving
it's
their
really sad
territory,
to
or is
see.
it entertainment, or both?
Well, it's not really about territory because it doesn't matter how far away they are. It doesn't matter if they're invading in their space or invading in their territory.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter. It's if they see a them. It's all about their visual cortex. If they see a them
Yeah.
and they're in a group, then these monkeys, obviously they're monkeys, they're really violent.
Yeah.
They will chase them down and tear them limb from limb. And
Wow.
it's all, now you're thinking, oh my gosh, so we're naturally racist. Oh no. Well, no, not exactly. Um, they're us's and them's can mean a whole different things, a
Yeah.
whole bunch of different
Religion.
things.
Religion, like my denomination is better than your denomination. I mean, it's
Uh-huh.
like we're programmed always to find our group, and
Yep.
then make.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is exactly right. And it's all about perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like an experiment where these people were split into arbitrary two groups. Two
Mm.
groups arbitrarily split. A bunch of a group of people arbitrarily split into two groups. Now, all of a sudden, as the day progresses, when they see people from the other group, their fear response kicks in. It's not super conscious. It's not like a super big fear response. It's not like it would release a ton amount of adrenaline, but there is an anxiety response.
Yeah.
When you see people from your group, oxytocin, right? And oxytocin is a really fun hormone to talk about because a lot of misconceptions about oxytocin. What do you like when you think about oxytocin? What do you think about?
Um, like stress relief or a good time or like
Yep.
pleasure, the side effect of adrenaline, kind of like a high physical.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. And
Is
that's
is
and
that
that's
all
what a lot of
wrong?
people do.
Is that all?
Well, no, well, it's like yes, but then you look closely and then you realize what it actually does. So here's what it
Okay.
actually does.
Okay.
So oxytocin, when people think about oxytocin, like, oh, oxytocin's amazing. It's the chemical that helps mothers and babies pair bond. It's the
Yeah.
chemical that gets released when you hug your partner. It's the chemical that gets released when you're having a good time with the people you love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, but what it actually does, very interesting. What it actually does is it exaggerates the difference between us and them. That's what it does in your brain. So an example of this is
Hmm.
there was a study done in Denmark. A study done where a researcher would ask a person, okay, so would you throw this person on the train track for $100, right, or $1 million? Would you throw this person on the train track for $1 million? And without any priming or without just as the control, it's like there would be three different names possible. There would be a Danish name or like a Northern European name, something like Peter or some Northern European like that. And then there would be names from people who are socially considered to be of them,
Right.
right? So mainly for them, it'd be Germans or Muslims, right? So then they'd ask a name. Do you want to throw Muhammad on the track, or do you want to throw Wolfgang or
Yeah.
Otto on the track,
Yeah.
right? And then without just as the control, it's pretty similar. Obviously there's still more uh, um, more they're more likely to choose someone like Muhammad to throw on the truck just because it's us versus them. It's
You're
still
right.
there, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then people get there's like little sprays that you can spray at people's noses that has oxytocin, right?
Oh.
So they spray them with oxytocin, and after that happens, they are so much more likely to throw Muhammad or
Oh.
Wolfgang on the track instead of Peter, right?
Wow.
So much more, so like multiple times higher, right?
Crazy.
And it's really scary because we think of oxytocin. Oh, the people we love, we love them, and it's a love hormone. But what it actually does is it exaggerates the difference. So you're more likely to be connected with the us's, and you're more likely to be more disconnected with the them's, right?
Have you seen the movie Equilibrium?
Equal. What is that?
Equilibrium. It had Christian Bale in it like a long time ago, like
Dude,
90s.
there's so many. I was thinking of Equalizer at first.
No,
That's
no.
I watched.
Equilibrium. I have watched that movie. I don't know how many times. Write it down. Write it down and
Equilibrium.
watch it.
I'm writing it down.
And then ask yourself, is this the solution or is this the problem?
Huh.
I'm not going to tell you anything about it. I'm just telling you it's relevant to what we're talking about and it'll really get you to think. For every solution or for every medicine there's side effects, right? So the movie addresses a particular type of medicine for society, and there's definitely side effects to it. It's a good movie.
Huh. It looks interesting. I'm surprised I've seen like the poster before, but I'm surprised I've never actually tried to watch it. Dystopian science fiction type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, watch it. It's really fascinating, especially from
Prosium.
Hmm?
Crosium is the
Oh,
drug.
yeah. That's the
Yeah,
medicine.
huh. Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. I actually will. I like watching movies. I'm a movie guy. I like watching movies. Um, yeah. So the us versus them biology. One thing that makes me the one thing that annoys me about sociology is all these things about created by society. Another thing really popular one nowadays is gender is created by society, right? And that's about as valid as saying that your personality is created by society.
Yeah.
Because gender is a part of your personality. That's just how gender
So,
works.
what is the. Okay. So, all of these sort of negative traits, racism, bigotry, us versus them, are hardwired into us. So, what is the process of overcoming our biology?
Well, like I said earlier, in reference to the us versus them's, it's all about perspective. It truly is all about perspective, and you can change the perspective um, based off of your environment, your stimulus, how you choose
Hmm.
how you choose to look at these things, right? Um, but the main
What if we changed our perspective to being like us is all of humanity and we just create a them like the spaghetti monster in the sky. So we band together as us against something. We're tricking ourselves to be more loving, like, so now we're all in the same group. Is that
You know
possible?
what? Have you seen the movie District 9?
No, I don't think
District
so.
9. It's about this really weird. It's kind of a weird movie. It's an older one. Maybe not that old, like mid 2000 maybe. It's a weird one. It's about this like alien civilization that takes refuge on Earth, and it that becomes the them. That becomes the them. And
Oh,
they are very terribly discriminated against, right? And that kind of it just made me think of that. But that's kind of what you just said is that's how humans make societies. What you just said, that's just a huge scale, and it's a hard to be a huge scale because of all the differences in our world and how far we live away. But that's kind of the thing is when you make a group of people, when you make a tribe,
uh huh.
that's what it becomes. We're the us. We're
Yeah.
the us, and there has to be a them. There has to.
Hmm.
If there's an us, then there is a them, right? So if we ever became like multi-planetary and we traveled to other star systems and met aliens and I mean, at that point we'd probably be a whole lot more advanced than we are right now. But it's like at that point, yeah, it's just a macro version. It's like a huge version of
Mm-hmm.
what we already kind of do on the small scale.
So we can never overcome it, but we can shift it.
Yeah,
Is that it?
yeah, and it's we can shift it in ways that have a more are more likely to advance our society to
Mm.
where we can shift it to um well, I mean, in reality, it's probably just not a it's just one of those things in our evolution that we could probably do away with right about now. The us's versus the thems.
That'd be cool.
We
I'd
could
be
probably
in.
do away with it.
We take a vote,
Yeah.
figure out how to get that
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, how to get that out of our brain. Yeah, we need to do that. Yeah, it's just I mean it evolved as a social it's just a group selection type thing, it's
Mm-hmm.
we make groups so that we can hunt down prey easier and then we all get a little portion so that we can survive, then we hunt down prey again and we can all survive and then mate and then pass on our genes,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And that's where it evolved, us versus them's, because if we the them's is not us's and the them's are the animals, right? It's and
Yeah.
another thing is another that I like to talk that I like to point out is all the like mostly uncontacted tribes, right? all of the ancient tribes that are still in effect today, right? All like like the sub-Saharan tribes that are in Africa, or like the deep in the Amazon rainforest type shit. Um, what's interesting is that in their languages and in most ancient languages that we understood from many years, from million or hundreds of thousands of years ago, or hundreds of years ago, is the word for human. The word for human is the word for their tribe.
Oh.
That is almost every example.
Huh.
The word for human is the word for their tribe. Okay? So it's a little hard, it's a little hard to kind of, because it's group selection.
Yeah,
It has
it's
to do with our evolution. Um, and everything is changed by perspective, right? And
mm-hmm.
that's one of the things I'm really, a lot of people hate this wokeism now today. Oh, why is the Little Mermaid black? Oh, she's not usually black. Ew. Like, oh, why is Thor a woman? No, you see, I think that there is an inherent good in that kind of diversity. I think one of the best ways to get over that us's versus them's is prolonged contact with the them's. Is
Yeah.
that is how you do it. That is diversity in the classroom, diversity at a young age, socializing with the them's at
Mm-hmm.
a young age. But then the problem is, who becomes the them after that?
It's like that cartoon, The Fox and the Hound.
I don't know.
Well, this fox becomes friends with a foxhound, like a bloodhound, and now they grow up and they're buddies. But now the dog is going on a fox hunt, and the fox is the prey. And but he was socialized with them at an early age, which left him very, very conflicted and sympathized with what he should have been considered an enemy, the fox.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's really all about perspective. And the that's kind of Robert Sapolsky did this lecture with a guy. I forgot his name, but Robert, he was a part of it. That's why I watched it. But there's this guy who had this amazing kind of like how to deal with the hate. Right? It was about hate. It
Mm-hmm.
was about the science of hate, and I forgot his name. But he is saying like um the best way to combat this type of stuff is to be diverse. Like that is the point of diversity, right? All these people who are against diversity, it's like I don't want to say that they're low key racist. I'm not going to say that because I don't think they are. I think it's more unconscious than we make it out to be. But um, diversity is inherently a good thing, and
Mm-hmm.
being in contact with the them's is or as we see the them's is
Yeah.
inherently a good thing, and that's something that we should all strive to do. Is learn and become friends with these
Mm-hmm.
people, um, and then you start to realize wow, we're pretty similar.
Yeah.
We're pretty similar. Yeah, we're both humans. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? So why do we hate each other again? Are we supposed to hate each other? No.
That's what I really have appreciated so much about exiting religion and just not being a Christian anymore is I didn't realize how deep that programming had gone into me. I had no idea. I mean, I knew like Christians, okay, for me, I was taught, I'll just give myself an example. I was taught the value of other people were the Christians in our community, like the highest value because it was our community. And then second tier value in other people are people we think we can get to join our community. And once they're in, then they move up to the community tier of value. And the ones that never join, the ones that are just clearly never going to join, we have no value. There's zero. And I didn't know that that was, I mean, I knew it, but I didn't know how much it affected my ability to have conversations with people. I mean, I have spent almost my whole life inside of religion, and I'm just now starting to see the world. The sun has finally started to come through the clouds. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's so much more about perspective than people make it out to be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, oh this racist person, oh my gosh, he just hates everyone who's not white. You know, he hates all these people, and he's an evil man. He's an evil racist man. Well, in reality, everyone has thems. Everyone in their brain has thems.
Mm-hmm.
You can't escape from it. There are thems. And the hate that you feel towards the thems that you feel, that the hate that they feel towards their thems is not any worse than the hate you feel towards your thems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was I tried reading Marx. I don't know how familiar you are with the reading of Marx,
I've not read any of this stuff, but I'm familiar a little bit.
but that was my biggest gripe with Marx is that I feel like it's just all predicated on the wrong thing. You know, he mostly about is history can be kind of defined in us versus the next, right? And it's the elite versus the middle class, or
Mm-hmm.
the bourgeois versus the proletariat, or the worker versus the capitalist, right? And it's everything is just a battle between those people, right? And if you know people act like that, right? That's how people act, and because that's what's in their it's what's in their biology. But if you try and philosophize ways to improve society, improve the world through that mindset, you're going to run into a lot of problems. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to run into a lot of fallacies. You're going to, and that's my biggest gripe with reading Marx is just us versus them. We, the workers, obviously, us, the workers, we're all the good guys, right? We're not evil. We can't do any evil things, right? But the rich, the people who steal our wages, oh man, oh, those guys, they're evil.
Yeah.
We keep them out. They're the thems, you know.
So it's
Just
just creating more
having
thems.
yeah, exactly. It's still division. It's all still division, you know. So that was my biggest criticism of Marx, and my biggest criticism a lot of like Hegel's too, and Zizek is just the thems. It's you're not aware of the biology. You have to to understand the society. You have to be aware of the individual. That's
Yeah.
a key axiom of sociology. And to understand the individual, you have to understand the biology, right? Because we are biological creatures.
So exposure is the best for lessening um, the
Divide.
the us versus them as far as like the dramatic lines of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, it's proven. That is proven. It's very easy to prove too.
Yeah, I think most
Um,
people, I mean, who have gone through that process, I mean, I can speak for myself. Yeah, the more I've been purposely exposing myself to other ideas, to other people, other cultures, other religions, the more comfortable I am staying there, having conversations and having relationships and all that stuff, because of the exposure.
yeah, I mean it's the solution, you know.
Huh.
Um, and that's just
Makes sense.
it's just a part of how we work, you know. It's just another biomechanism that we have in our brain.
Yeah.
And it's really sad that it's in there. It really is, because it's been used for hundreds of millions of years in our evolution. As long as we've had social hierarchies,
Mm-hmm.
there's been thems,
Yeah.
right? And it's really sad that it's in there, but it is in there. And
Well, one thing I've learned is that every obstacle, every path has got an opportunity to learn lessons. And so it's there. If humanity has the desire, we will probably come up with some really great solutions for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Hopefully.
So it's getting about that time.
Yeah, me too. Man, it was great.
Yeah,
Thanks for.
yeah, good conversation.
This is the first time anyone has taken me up on doing the Zoom off of the TikTok. There's been a couple people, but then they jumped ship like right away. They couldn't get stuff to work, or they just changed their mind, or something like that. But this is great. I
Before
mean,
we go, Doubler Kelly has a question. Just wanted to ask, what was it before I have to hop off?
are they even
What
still on
was it?
here? They're not even
Gonna
on. They're
ask.
not even on. I don't think they're on here anymore.
Oh,
They jumped off. Yeah,
all right.
it'd be interesting to go through the chat while we were chatting and see. But as soon as the live ends, then all the chat disappears, which is
I don't
unfortunate.
think there was much.
Yeah.
Don't think there was much.
Oh well.
Wait to the remote viewing, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
1K
just.
likes though. Yeah.
It was. Oh, a new message. Let's see what popped in. Oh, smiley faces.
God is love, King, the Almighty, our Creator and our Savior. Praise God, praise. Well, all right.
Okay, we're both wanting to leave, but just as a thought, so interesting. The lack of curiosity is astounding.
I'm
We're we're,
right.
we're talking
Everyone listen to me.
we're talking about some really interesting stuff,
Yeah.
and it's like a shotgun, boom, 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 statement after statement after statement. Where's the curiosity? How come there's not? Because curiosity is I think key to having empathy. You can't have empathy without some sort of curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like dogging on Christians, but it just seems to be sort of the rule of thumb that Christians don't have very much empathy, not very much curiosity, at least in this format. I'm not saying
Yeah.
like in real life, I think people behave
Yeah.
differently, but in this format, they just seem to be the least empathetic out of all the people I talk to.
Well, why would they? I
Uh,
mean, they're going to heaven in what they believe. They're going to
uh,
experience true sublime bliss for the rest of eternity. They
yeah,
don't have any reason to do that. That's the whole point of evangelicalism is evangelism sorry, evangelism is you want everyone to experience heaven, so you go tell everyone, and if they have any other ideas, well, they're wrong
dead to
because
me.
you go to heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was great talking, and if you want to stay in touch, I do have ways. If you go to the link in my bio, it takes you to my YouTube channel, and
I'll follow you.
that has a link to the Facebook group. Anyways, if we want, we can have more conversations. But yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I appreciate
Awesome.
it, and I hope you have a good night. And I'm
You
going to
too,
get
man.
off, and I'm going to get ready
You
to go to
too.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to do some college shit.
Yeah.